Emily was getting ready with her bridesmaids, all smiles and laughter. Little did she know that her faithful furry companion Max had a different plan for the day. Max, her dog, had always been by Emily's side through thick and thin. As the preparations went on, Max began to exhibit odd behavior. He paced restlessly, whining softly, and kept nudging Emily with his nose. At first, everyone thought he was just being anxious due to the commotion. Then he started biting her dress. However, Emily couldn't shake off the feeling that Max was trying to communicate something important. Though he had bitten her dress, it luckily didn't leave any marks, or worse, holes on her special day. She kneeled before Max as she held his face. "What is wrong, boy?" Emily asked, confused at the behavior of her trusted friend. He made a soft bark before he whined his paws, anxiously patting the ground. Emily sighed, not knowing what to do with poor Max's behavior. She wanted him to be part of her special days, but she couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something must be wrong. "Baby, today is an important day, and I need you on your best behavior." Max barked at this as he sat down. He nuzzled her dress once again as one of his paws pawed at the veil that was cascading down her train. This behavior didn't seem erratic, but with purpose. Max had never been a bad dog before, and Emily was sure he wouldn't start now. She just had to find out what was the matter. Emily was a firm believer that dogs, like other animals, had something like a sixth sense and knew when something was wrong. She knew that she had to find out before the wedding. However, she would never have guessed that it would be something like this. Max's adversity to her wedding dress made her feel sure that it had to do with something concerning the marriage. It made her wonder about Max's past instances with her soon-to-be husband. Max had always seemed to be okay with Richard before everything. Sure, he had been territorial, but it couldn't be him, could it? Max hadn't necessarily growled at Richard or barked excessively towards him. Sure, Max never lay down with him and preferred Emily at all times, but could that even mean anything? Max and Emily had been alone the 6.5 years before she met him. Max had only just turned 7 when Richard asked her to marry him. The speed of their relationship had worried Emily at first, but he had talked her out of those worries and said that he simply loved her and that she was the one for him. With words like that, how could she refuse? She loved him so much and wanted to start a family with him. She didn't know what to think right now. Had it been a wise and intelligent decision? Emily had always prided herself in how smart she was. The wedding would be a big milestone for her, but was it with the right person? Max did make her think about her choices. Maybe she was getting cold feet. She inhaled sharply as she petted her best friend Max, trying to ease his behavior whilst keeping herself calm as well. It was like his behavior had torn off the rose-colored glasses she was wearing. The doom that loomed over her scared her. Was it truly happiness in front of her, or was something more sinister at play? She decided that she would ask a trusted friend, just in case, to look into it to ease her worries. If he couldn't find something, it was just blatant paranoia. She couldn't stop her marriage just because of some idiotic cold feet. However, she could ease her mind by calling in a favor with a friend. She was sure her paranoia was keeping her from fully enjoying her wedding day. Something that was most likely not even needed, as she was sure her friend would prove that everything was fine. Calming herself down by inhaling and exhaling, she made the phone call. Emily's friend, David, soon picked up the phone. He was a private investigator and they had known each other practically from birth, as their mothers had been close friends. He greeted her when he picked up the phone. "Hi, David," Emily responded, before she continued to more dire matters. She confided in him, "I'm sorry to disturb you, but I have a private matter that I want to be handled discreetly. Could you do that for me, please?" David immediately showed his concern for Emily. "Em, is everything all right? And of course, anything for you. What do you need my help with?" When David asked Emily what was wrong, she decided to release her pent-up worries about this big day. She told him about Max's strange behavior, a dog that he had known when he was just a pup, and shared her other concerns. He listened attentively and understood her worry. Would he be able to find out what was wrong? Emily, I understand your worries. I will make sure they disappear by looking into your fiancé. I will call you if I find anything. As long as you don't hear that phone ring, everything is perfectly all right. So please don't worry and just enjoy your special day. Everything will be fine. David said to settle Emily's nerves. She thanked him profusely, and after exchanging a few details about Richard and her life, they both bid their goodbyes. The idea of everything being all right until he would call seemed to have settled Emily. She gave Max a final pet before ushering the sweet dog back inside. Back to preparations. Her future mother-in-law was almost immediately in her face when she returned. "Has that blasted dog finally learned how to behave?" she asked sternly towards both Emily and Max. Emily wanted to answer, but Max gave a few barks in reply before sitting down next to Emily. Maybe it had to do with her future mother-in-law and how the woman had been fretting and nitpicking about every small thing concerning the wedding. Maybe it had been Francine who had been off and had Max behaving in such a strange manner. She couldn't spiral again, but she made sure to ask David to also look into her future mother-in-law. Emily smiled at Francine. "Yeah, he just needed to blow off some steam, didn't you, Max?" At this, the dog barked again. This time, it seemed to be in agreement. Francine nearly scowled at Max as she walked off again. Emily followed along, returning to her bridesmaids after sending David a message regarding Francine. She tried to relax and concentrate on enjoying her special day. It would start with her getting pampered by the makeup artist, followed by the hairstylist that her friends had arranged for her. Max seemed to have calmed down. Maybe he had simply been as nervous as her. Emily decided that nerves were a necessity during times like this. It was merely healthy. Getting married was a moment a lot of women dreamed, and the fear of it not being perfect always weighed heavy on people. Emily would never have guessed what the gnawing feeling was actually about. She kept a close eye on her phone, almost waiting for it to start making a sound, but during the entire preparation, no sound came from it. The fact that it didn't slightly worried her, but it also relaxed her as she remembered David's words. If he didn't call, it meant everything was fine. But then she heard a sudden noise coming from her phone. Her heart stopped. Had David found something? And so soon? She nearly bolted towards her phone to pick it up, but when she grabbed it, she saw it was just a next from her wedding planner, telling her it was time for her to leave towards the chapel in which she would be married. It was time. Max obeyed Emily by sitting or moving the way she wished, and she was able to fit him into his ring-bearer attire, a cute little thing that would be strapped on his back. She had been adamant to Richard that she wanted him incorporated into the wedding, and he had been happy to comply with the request. On the way towards the location, Max again was a bit restless, but behaved well. In the car, he simply nuzzled Emily's dress as he looked up at her with his puppy dog eyes. But she and the bridesmaids only thought this was cute, especially in the small suit he was wearing. They had no clue what was going to happen next. The location was everything Emily had dreamed, so when she walked down the aisle to meet her beloved, she knew that Max was still waiting at the back of the aisle to be called when they needed the rings. Bouquet in hand, she finally reached Richard, who had a large smile on his lips. However, there seemed to be a large shift when Max had to walk down the aisle. His attire made him so handsome in Emily's eyes, the rings attached to his back as he slowly walked down the aisle. But when he was only a couple of feet away, he stopped moving to the confusion of everyone there. Richard tried to call Max towards him with an encouraging tone, but Max didn't budge an inch. Instead, he barked loudly before taking a few steps back, almost as if on high alert. As Emily was about to approach Max herself and coax him forward, the chapel doors suddenly busted open. There stood David, slightly disheveled and out of breath, and he raced down the aisle clutching a folder. "Emily!" he called, his eyes zeroing in on the rings still attached to Max's back. "I need to speak with you. Now," he said, his voice filled with urgency. He passed Max, who simmered down before he gave her the folder. As Emily hurriedly moved toward Max and David, leaving Richard behind, her heart raced with uncertainty. Her trusted dog, Max, stood by David's side, the rings still attached to his back glinting in the chapel's soft light. Max seemed to sense the gravity of the situation as he maintained a calm demeanor. Richard, however, couldn't contain his frustration and apprehension. He reached out, gripping Emily's arm with an intensity that surprised her. His voice grew louder as he demanded an explanation, the anger in his eyes overshadowing the love and joy that had been present just moments ago. Emily hesitated, feeling the weight of the situation. She tried to explain Max's odd behavior, her voice trembling with anxiety. Richard's anger continued to swell, and desperation crept into his tone as he struggled to make sense of the rapidly unfolding events. Despite her efforts to reassure Richard of her trust in him, Emily could see doubt and confusion etched on his face. Her own uncertainty gnawed at her, but she was determined to uncover the truth. Just as Emily was about to explain further, David, resolute and composed, stepped forward. He handed her the folder that held the answers to her doubts, and with a deep breath, he began to reveal the shocking truth that would shatter the illusion of her perfect wedding day. With David's revelation hanging in the air, Emily managed to slip her arm out of Richard's grip. She needed space to process the turmoil within her. Without a word, she turned to Max, her loyal companion, and wrapped her arms around him, seeking solace in his comforting presence. As Emily clung to Max, he seemed to sense her distress. Max resumed barking, this time more fervently, whenever Richard or even Francine attempted to approach. His protective instincts were on high alert, guarding Emily from further emotional turmoil. Still holding Max close, Emily cautiously opened the heavy folder that David had handed her. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she scanned the contents. Shock coursed through her as she began to comprehend the depth of the deception that had surrounded her. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as her gaze shifted between Richard, the man she had thought she would marry, and Francine, the person she had believed was her future mother-in-law. The betrayal ran deep, and the weight of their actions was crushing her spirit. Unable to contain her emotions any longer, Emily's voice cracked as she made a firm declaration. "There will be no wedding!" The chapel filled with her emotional outburst, leaving everyone stunned by the abrupt turn of events. Emily's world had been shattered, and she was determined to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As Emily's emotional declaration hung heavy in the air, Richard, in a desperate bid to regain control, raised his voice, urging everyone to remain seated. He reached out to Emily, his trembling hands a mix of reassurance and anxiety, vowing to address whatever concerns she had. Emily's eyes, still glistening with tears, met Richard's. Despite the evidence in her hands, she clung to a glimmer of hope. She insisted that whatever she had just read in the folder must be false, desperately wishing that this nightmare would prove to be a terrible mistake. However, David's revelations left no room for denial. Emily's trembling voice grew stronger as she confronted Richard about his deceit. She demanded answers, her emotions a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and confusion. Richard, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to win Emily back with words of love and promises of change. He pleaded, his desperation now evident to everyone in the chapel. But Emily had seen through his deception and manipulation. As Richard's pleas fell on deaf ears, Emily's gaze sharpened with a painful realization. She began to understand the extent of Richard's manipulation throughout their relationship, the carefully crafted facade he had presented to her, and the depth of her own vulnerability. The truth had shattered her trust, leaving her questioning the authenticity of their love. Emily's emotions churned as she turned her gaze towards Francine, the woman she had once considered her future mother-in-law. Anger and disappointment welled up inside her as she realized the extent of Francine's involvement in the deception, adding another layer of betrayal to her already shattered world. Amidst the chaos and confusion, Emily's mind raced with questions. She grappled with inner turmoil, trying to piece together her shattered life. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of doubt and uncertainty as she contemplated her next steps in this unexpected journey. With the chapel in disarray and her wedding cancelled, Emily turned to her family for support. She engaged in heart-wrenching conversations with her loved ones, sharing the painful ordeal she had just experienced. Their presence provided a glimmer of solace in the midst of the storm. As the reality of her situation sunk in, Emily's determination grew. She knew she needed to seek legal advice to navigate the complex web of deceit and betrayal that had entangled her life. With a steely resolve, she made the decision to take legal action. In her first meeting with a seasoned attorney, Emily began to explore her legal options. The attorney listened carefully, offering guidance and support as Emily shared the intricate details of her heartbreaking story. It was the first step towards seeking justice and reclaiming control over her life. The process of annulment began, and with each step, Emily navigated a roller coaster of emotions. The paperwork, the legalities, it all felt like an overwhelming burden on her already wounded heart. Yet, she persevered, determined to free herself from the deceit that had ensnared her. Emily confided in David, her trusted friend and ally. They engaged in intense discussions about her safety and protection. David, with his expertise, helped outline a plan to shield Emily from potential retaliation, ensuring her well-being in the face of uncertainty. Time passed, and Emily embarked on a journey of gradual healing. With the support of her family and friends, she discovered newfound independence and resilience. Her shattered confidence slowly began to mend as she learned to trust herself once more. In moments of reflection, Emily realized the profound importance of trust. She marveled at Max's unwavering loyalty, how he had sensed the deception long before she did. Max became a symbol of trust in her life, a reminder that some bonds remained unbreakable. Despite the emotional turmoil, Emily decided to confront Richard privately. She needed closure and answers to the lingering questions that haunted her. With a mixture of determination and trepidation, she arranged a meeting with the man who had shattered her dreams, hoping to find some semblance of truth amidst the lie. Emily gathered her bridesmaids, her closest friends, to confide in them about the shocking discovery. Tears flowed as she recounted the painful truth that had unraveled her wedding day. Her bridesmaids offered their unwavering support, standing by her side in this trying time. As Emily shared the contents of the folder with her bridesmaids, the shocking revelation of Richard's double life left them all in disbelief. The folder contained irrefutable evidence of his deceit, including proof of his existing marriage and involvement in illegal activities. A stunned silence settled over the room as Emily's bridesmaids absorbed the magnitude of the betrayal. The weight of the truth hung heavily in the air, leaving them all at a loss for words. With her bridesmaids' support, Emily steeled herself with newfound determination. She resolved to make a clean break from Richard and the web of deceit that had ensnared her life. The path ahead was uncertain, but Emily was ready to face it head-on. Emily continued to lean on her family for strength and guidance. They discussed the cancelled wedding, its emotional toll, and the need to move forward. Emily's family stood by her, ready to support her as she embarked on a new chapter, free from the betrayal that had shattered her world. Emily made a firm decision to turn the page on this painful chapter in her life. She was determined to move forward, free from the shadows of betrayal that had plagued her. A new beginning beckoned, and she embraced it with strength and resilience. In an effort to rectify the situation, Emily painstakingly returned the wedding gifts and explained the heartbreaking circumstances to her guests. It was a challenging task, but Emily faced it with grace and honesty, determined to maintain her integrity throughout the process. Emily continued her discussions with David about safeguarding herself from potential retaliation. Their conversations delved into strategies for ensuring her safety and security as she navigated the aftermath of the shattered wedding. As a symbol of her newfound freedom, Emily removed her engagement ring, the once beloved token of her relationship with Richard. With a mixture of sadness and relief, she cast it aside, signifying the final closure of a chapter she was eager to leave behind. With the weight of betrayal lifted from her shoulders, Emily began to feel a newfound sense of freedom. She looked ahead with hope, envisioning a brighter future without Richard's deception clouding her path. As the sun rose on each new day, so did Emily's optimism and determination to embrace life once more.